Admiral Zextar stood on the bridge of the Imperial dreadnought Crimson Dominion, his forearms crossed behind his back as he gazed out at the swirling hyperspace tunnel. The massive warship, stretching nearly 3 kilometers in length, was one of the Galactic Empire's most feared vessels. Its dark hull bristled with plasma cannons and quantum torpedoes, enough firepower to reduce entire planets to ash. "Sir, we're approaching the Sol system," reported Lieutenant Crevier from her station. Her tentacles danced across the holographic controls with practiced ease. Long-range sensors are picking up the usual primitive electromagnetic emissions from the third planet. Zextar's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. The Vrex had been the dominant military force in the galaxy for over 2 millennia, and he had personally overseen the conquest of 47 star systems. Each one had fallen within days, sometimes hours, once the Empire's forces arrived. The pattern was always the same: initial resistance, followed by swift capitulation when the aliens realized the futility of fighting the Empire's superior technology. "Maintain standard approach vector," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of countless victories. "Deploy reconnaissance drones and begin preliminary scans. I want a full tactical assessment of their defensive capabilities before we begin the bombardment." The Sol system had been on the Empire's expansion list for decades, but it had been deemed low priority. The indigenous species humans, according to the xenobiological reports, were still confined to their home planet and a few primitive outposts on nearby celestial bodies. Their technology was laughably primitive by galactic standards. No faster-than-light travel, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. They still used chemical propulsion and kinetic projectiles. Commander Veltar, Zextar's second-in-command, approached with a datapad in his clawed hands. "Admiral, the preliminary scans are complete. The humans have approximately 300 small orbital platforms around their planet. Most appear to be communication or observation satellites. We've detected several larger structures that might be space stations, but nothing that poses any threat to our forces." "Any sign of military vessels?" Zextar asked, though he already knew the answer. "A few small craft in various orbits. The largest appears to be some kind of scientific vessel. None show evidence of advanced weaponry or shielding." Veltar paused, consulting his datapad. "Sir, this conquest should take no more than 6 hours. Standard procedure would be to broadcast surrender terms, allow them 12 standard time units to comply, then begin systematic elimination of population centers." Zextar nodded approvingly. The Empire had refined this process over centuries of conquest. It was efficient, thorough, and sent a clear message to other potential resistance movements throughout the galaxy. The humans would be given one chance to surrender unconditionally. When they inevitably refused, as all species did initially, the bombardment would begin. The Crimson Dominion was not alone. Following behind in perfect formation were 12 Imperial destroyers, each one capable of glassing a continent, and 36 assault frigates carrying invasion forces. The fleet represented enough firepower to sterilize hundreds of worlds, all focused on this single, primitive planet. "Bring us to combat readiness," Zextar ordered. "Begin charging the main cannons and warm up the plasma bombardment systems. I want to make this quick and clean." As the crew busied themselves with preparations, Zextar allowed himself a moment of reflection. In his long career, he had witnessed the fall of great civilizations and the extinction of entire species. Some had been warriors, others scholars, still others had been peaceful traders who had never known war. All had fallen before the Empire's might. It was the natural order of things: the strong conquered the weak, and the Empire was the strongest force the galaxy had ever known. The Vrex themselves had once been conquerors, rising from their harsh homeworld to dominate first their star system, then their local region of space. When they encountered other species, they had two choices: submit to Vrex rule or face annihilation. Most chose submission. Those who chose resistance were eliminated as examples to others. "Admiral," Lieutenant Crevier called out, her voice tight with confusion. "I'm reading something unusual on long-range sensors." Zextar turned his attention to the main display screen. "Elaborate." "There's an object moving at high velocity toward the system's edge. It doesn't match any known ship configuration in our databases." She paused, her tentacles working frantically at her controls. "Sir, the object it's moving faster than our fastest reconnaissance vessels." "Impossible," Commander Veltar scoffed. "These primitives don't even have basic fusion drives." They couldn't possibly have developed faster than light technology. But Zexstar was studying the sensor readings with growing unease. The object was indeed moving at incredible speed, far beyond what any human technology should be capable of. More disturbing was its trajectory. It was heading directly toward their fleet. Could it be a probe from another Empire force? Veltar suggested. Perhaps another admiral decided to claim this system for himself? Negative, Crevier reported. The design is completely unknown. And, Admiral, it's not just fast. It's accelerating. Current velocity is 0.7 lightspeed and increasing. Zexstar felt his blood chill. 0.7 lightspeed was dangerous enough in normal space. Most civilizations considered anything above 0.5 to be suicidal due to the risk of collision with space debris. But this object was still accelerating, apparently without concern for such dangers. Time to intercept, he demanded. At current acceleration, 18 minutes, sir. 18 minutes. Zexstar had fought in dozens of space battles, commanded fleets against advanced civilizations, faced down the weapons of species that had mastered technologies the Empire could barely comprehend. But something about this approaching object filled him with a dread he had never experienced. Signal the fleet, he ordered. Battle formation Omega. Charge all weapon systems and raise deflector shields to maximum power. The Imperial fleet responded with practiced precision. The massive dreadnought took point position while the destroyers formed a protective screen around it. The assault frigates moved to the rear, their troop compartments sealed and their point defense systems activated. In moments, the formation bristled with enough firepower to destroy entire fleets. Admiral, came another voice from the communications station. We're receiving a transmission from the unknown vessel. Audio only? No sir, it's in over 400 different languages simultaneously. Including several that match human linguistic patterns, but also Vrex, Kalani, Zephyrian, and dozens of others from across the galaxy. Zexstar's mandibles clicked nervously. How could a human vessel, if that's what it was, know so many galactic languages? The Empire had worked for centuries to develop universal translation protocols, and even they couldn't manage such linguistic breadth. Play it, he commanded. The bridge fell silent as a voice filled the air. It was strange, somehow familiar yet alien, speaking in perfect Vrex but with undertones that suggested it was equally fluent in every other language it was simultaneously broadcasting. Imperial Fleet, this is Captain Sarachin of the Earth Defense Force vessel Retribution. You have entered sovereign human space with hostile intent. You will immediately withdraw your forces beyond the heliopause or face the consequences. This is your only warning. The silence that followed was deafening. Then, Commander Veltar began to laugh, a harsh, chittering sound that echoed through the bridge. Earth Defense Force, he wheezed between laughs. These primitives think they have a defense force? And they're threatening us? But Zexstar was not laughing. Something about the transmission troubled him deeply. The voice had been calm, professional, utterly confident. There had been no trace of fear, no desperate bravado of a species facing extinction. Just a simple statement of fact and a clear warning. Sir, Crevier interrupted, her voice pitched higher than usual. The object is now at 0.9 light speed and still accelerating. It's... Admiral, at this velocity, even a collision with our shields would cause massive damage. Surely they're not planning to ram us? Veltar asked, his laughter dying away. Even primitives aren't that suicidal. But, as they watched, the object showed no signs of deviating from its course. It was aimed directly at the center of their formation, moving faster than any vessel any of them had ever seen, apparently without concern for its own destruction. 8 minutes to intercept, Crevier reported. Velocity now exceeds light speed. Sir, our sensors are having difficulty maintaining lock. Exceeds light speed. The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Faster-than-light travel in normal space was considered impossible by every known law of physics. The Empire's own ships used hyperspace tunnels to achieve such speeds, carefully calculated jumps between dimensions that avoided the lethal effects of relativistic travel. But this human vessel was somehow moving faster than light while remaining in normal space. Fire a warning shot, Zexstar ordered. Full-power plasma burst, aimed to pass 5,000 kilometers ahead of their projected path. The Crimson Dominion's main cannon discharged with a sound like thunder. A beam of superheated plasma, hot enough to boil away the atmosphere of a small planet, lanced out through space. It was a weapon that had shattered the defenses of dozens of civilizations, a demonstration of power that usually ended conflicts before they truly began. The beam passed harmlessly ahead of the approaching vessel, which showed no reaction whatsoever to the display of force. Target is maintaining course and speed, Crevier reported. 5 minutes to intercept. Zextar's mind raced. In 5 minutes, that object would reach his fleet. If it maintained its current velocity, the kinetic impact alone would destroy his flagship and, probably several other vessels. But surely no species would sacrifice their most advanced ship in a kamikaze attack against a superior force? It made no tactical sense. Unless they had more ships. The thought struck him like a physical blow. What if this wasn't humanity's most advanced vessel? What if it was just one of many? What if the Empire had finally encountered a species with technology that matched or exceeded their own? "Sir," the communications officer called out. "We're receiving another transmission from the approaching vessel." "Put it through." The same calm voice filled the bridge again. "Imperial fleet, you have ignored our warning. As you appear to be unfamiliar with human military doctrine, allow me to educate you. When we say this is your only warning, we mean exactly that. Prepare to witness the consequences of your decision." The transmission cut off, leaving the bridge in tense silence. Outside the viewport, the approaching object was now visible as a bright point of light growing larger by the second. At its current velocity, it would reach them in less than 3 minutes. "Sir," Commander Veltar said quietly, "perhaps we should consider a tactical withdrawal? We could regroup, call for reinforcements, study this new technology before." "No," Zextar cut him off sharply. "We are the Imperial Navy. We do not retreat from primitives, no matter what tricks they may have developed." He turned to his weapons officer. "Target the approaching vessel with all forward guns. Fire everything we have." The Crimson Dominion and its escort ships opened fire with devastating fury. Hundreds of plasma beams, quantum torpedoes, and particle cannons created a wall of destructive energy that should have vaporized anything in its path. The combined firepower was enough to crack the crust of a planet. The beams struck the human vessel and, simply, stopped. Not reflected, not absorbed, not deflected. They simply ceased to exist, as if they had never been fired at all. The quantum torpedoes, designed to phase through any known shielding, approached the target and winked out of existence. The particle cannon beams, moving at near light speed, reached the vessel and vanished without effect. "Impossible," Veltar breathed. "No shield technology in the galaxy can." He never finished the sentence. The human vessel, still moving at beyond light speed, reached the Imperial formation. But, instead of ramming them, it simply stopped. Not slowed down, not decelerated gradually, it went from faster than light speed to complete motionlessness in an instant, positioned exactly in the center of the Imperial fleet. For a moment, nothing happened. The two forces faced each other across a few thousand kilometers of space, the massive Imperial dreadnought with its escort of destroyers and frigates, and the single human vessel that had somehow appeared among them. Then, Zextar got his first clear look at the enemy ship, and his blood turned to ice. The human vessel was sleek and angular, its hull a deep black that seemed to absorb light itself. It was perhaps half the length of the Crimson Dominion, but there was something about its design that spoke of terrible purpose. No decorative elements, no ceremonial features, no wasted space. Every line, every curve, every surface had been optimized for one thing: war. But it was the weapons that truly terrified him. The ship bristled with gun ports and missile tubes, but they were unlike anything in the Imperial arsenal. Instead of the bulky plasma cannons and torpedo launchers he was familiar with, these weapons were almost elegant in their simplicity. They moved with fluid precision, tracking targets with mechanical grace, and there were hundreds of them. "Admiral," Crevier's voice was barely a whisper. "I'm reading massive energy signatures from the human vessel. Power output it's off our scales, sir. Whatever they're using for a power source, it's beyond our understanding." "Sir," the communications officer interrupted. "The humans are transmitting again." "Captain Chen to Imperial Fleet," the voice said, still maddeningly calm. "You have fired upon a vessel operating under the authority of the Earth Defense Force. This constitutes an act of war against the Human Federation. As the senior military officer present, I am authorized to respond with appropriate force." You now have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal from human space, or I will demonstrate why that would be the wiser choice. 30 seconds. Zexstar looked around his bridge at the crew that had served him faithfully through dozens of campaigns. Warriors all, veterans of countless battles, officers who had never known defeat. They stared back at him with a mixture of fear and confusion that he had never seen before. "Sir?" Veltar asked quietly. "Your orders?" Zexstar straightened his shoulders and lifted his head. He was a Vrex admiral, heir to a tradition of conquest that stretched back millennia. Whatever technology these humans possessed, whatever tricks they had developed, he would not be intimidated by a single ship. "All vessels," he announced over the fleet channel. "Concentrate all firepower on the human vessel. Full bombardment. Destroy them." The Imperial fleet erupted in coordinated destruction. Every ship fired everything they had: plasma beams, quantum torpedoes, particle cannons, fusion missiles, graviton bombs. The space around the human vessel became a maelstrom of deadly energy, enough firepower to sterilize a dozen worlds. For 3 full minutes, the bombardment continued. When it finally ceased, the space around the human ship glowed with residual energy. Surely nothing could have survived such an assault. But, when the energy dissipated, the human vessel remained exactly where it had been, apparently undamaged. Not a single scorch mark marred its dark hull. It sat in the midst of the Imperial fleet like a predator evaluating its prey. 30 seconds are up, came Captain Chen's voice, and, for the first time, Zexstar detected something new in her tone. Not anger, not hatred, but something infinitely worse: disappointment. "You have chosen poorly," she said. "Observe." The human ship moved then, but not in any way Zexstar's experience had prepared him for. It didn't accelerate gradually or maneuver with thrusters. It simply appeared in a new position, as if the space between its original location and its destination had been folded away. One moment it was motionless in the center of the formation, the next it was alongside the destroyer Voidrender, moving at the same velocity as the Imperial ship. What happened next would haunt Zexstar's dreams for the rest of his life, assuming he lived long enough to have dreams again. The human vessel extended what looked like a mechanical arm from its hull, not a weapon, just a simple manipulator appendage. The arm reached out and touched the destroyer's hull. The Voidrender, a warship that had participated in the conquest of 8 star systems, a vessel whose armor could withstand direct hits from plasma cannons, simply came apart. Not exploded, not melted, not torn, it disassembled itself, breaking down into component atoms that drifted away like cosmic dust. 3,000 Vrex warriors died without even having time to scream. The human ship moved again, appearing next to another destroyer. Another gentle touch, another proud warship reduced to its constituent elements. Then, another. And another. All ships. Zexstar screamed into his communicator. Evasive maneuvers. Scatter formation. Get away from that thing. But, it was too late. The human vessel was everywhere at once, appearing and disappearing throughout the Imperial formation. Each time it materialized next to one of his ships, that ship died. Not destroyed in battle, not defeated honorably, simply unmade, as if it had never existed at all. In less than 10 minutes, Admiral Zexstar's proud fleet was reduced to just 3 vessels, his flagship and 2 assault frigates that had been at the formation's edge. The rest, 12 destroyers and 34 frigates, were gone, their crews transformed into drifting clouds of atoms. The human ship materialized directly in front of the Crimson Dominion's main viewport. This close, Zexstar could see details of its construction that filled him with even greater dread. The hull wasn't just dark, it seemed to bend light around itself, creating an optical effect that hurt to look at directly. The weapons that tracked his ship moved with impossible precision, and he could see now that they weren't just guns. Some appeared to be devices that could manipulate matter itself, others seemed to twist spacetime in ways that violated every law of physics he knew. "Admiral Zexstar," Captain Chen's voice filled the bridge once more. "I believe introductions are in order. I am Captain Sarah Chen, Commanding Officer of the Earth Defense Force Heavy Cruiser Retribution. You have just witnessed a demonstration of human military technology. I trust it has been educational." Zexstar found his voice somehow. What are you?" "We are human," came the simple reply. "We are also very disappointed in you, Admiral. Our intelligence indicated that the Galactic Empire was a civilization capable of reason, negotiation, perhaps even eventual cooperation. Instead, you arrived in our space with invasion in mind and opened fire on our vessel without provocation. This suggests that our intelligence was incorrect. Your intelligence? Zextar's voice cracked. How could you possibly have intelligence on the Empire? You're a primitive species confined to a single planet. Admiral, that is perhaps the most inaccurate statement ever made in the history of galactic warfare. We have been aware of your empire for quite some time. We have been watching, learning, evaluating. We had hoped that when contact was finally made, it would be peaceful. We were prepared for that possibility. Unfortunately, we were also prepared for this possibility. The implications hit Zextar like a physical blow. You've been watching us? Admiral, humans have been traveling between the stars for over 2 centuries. We have colonies in 47 star systems, research stations in hundreds of others, and deep space monitoring posts throughout this galaxy. Your empire controls approximately 12% of known inhabited worlds. We were content to let you have them, as long as you didn't threaten human interests. Today, you crossed that line. Zextar felt his world crumbling around him. The Empire had believed itself the dominant force in the galaxy, the inheritors of civilizations that spanned 1,000 worlds. But this human was telling him that they were nothing more than a regional power, unaware that a vastly superior civilization had been observing them like insects in a terrarium. "What do you want?" he whispered. "That, Admiral, is an excellent question. Until today, we wanted nothing from your empire except to be left alone. Now, however, you have committed an act of war against humanity. This creates certain obligations on our part." The human ship moved closer to the viewport, close enough that Zextar could see individual weapon systems tracking his bridge. Each one was small, elegant, and obviously capable of reducing his entire ship to its component atoms. "We require 3 things, Admiral Zextar. First, you will immediately withdraw all Imperial forces from human space and establish no closer than 100 light-years from any human installation. Second, you will deliver a message to your superiors explaining exactly what happened here today. Third, you will inform them that Captain Sarah Chin of the Earth Defense Force will be arriving at your capital world in 72 hours to discuss new terms of coexistence." "And if the Empire refuses?" Zextar asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then, Admiral, you will discover just how gentle today's demonstration actually was. The Retribution is one of our older ships, considered suitable for patrol duties in this relatively peaceful sector. We have others. Many others. Some of them are considerably less diplomatic in their approach to problem solving." The human ship began to withdraw, moving away from the viewport with the same impossible grace it had demonstrated throughout the encounter. "Admiral," Captain Chen's voice came one last time. A word of advice from one warrior to another. "Your empire has built its power on the conquest of weaker civilizations. That strategy has served you well for millennia. But now you have encountered a civilization that is not weaker. Consider carefully how you wish to proceed. The survival of your species may depend on the wisdom of your next decision." With that, the human vessel simply vanished. Not jumped to hyperspace, not accelerated away, it simply ceased to be there, leaving Admiral Zextar alone with the wreckage of his shattered fleet and the dawning realization that the galaxy was a very different place than he had believed just 1 hour earlier. The bridge was silent except for the soft hum of life support systems. Zextar looked around at his surviving crew, seeing his own shock and confusion reflected in their faces. They had just witnessed the impossible, a single ship destroying an entire Imperial fleet without apparent effort, demonstrating technology that made their most advanced weapons seem like stone tools. "Sir," Commander Veltar said quietly. "What are your orders?" Zextar stared out at the space where 49 Imperial warships had been destroyed in less than 15 minutes. Somewhere in the distance, Earth hung in space, a blue-green world that had just revealed itself to be the home of the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever known. "Set course for the capital," he said finally. "Maximum speed. And prepare a message for High Command. Tell them." He paused, struggling to find words for what had just occurred. "Tell them that everything we thought we knew about the galaxy is wrong. Tell them that humanity is not a primitive species to be conquered. Tell them that Captain Sarah Chin is coming, and they had better be prepared to listen to what she has to say." As the surviving ships of his fleet turned away from Earth and jumped to hyperspace, Zextar wondered if he was carrying the news of humanity's power to his superiors, or if he was simply delaying the inevitable conquest of the Empire by giving them time to prepare for a war they could never hope to win. Either way, the galaxy would never be the same. The golden spires of Rex Prime pierced the purple sky like daggers of light, their crystalline surfaces reflecting the twin suns that had shone down upon the Empire's capital for over 3,000 years. High Chancellor Mordak stood at the window of the Supreme War Council chamber, his forearms clasped behind his back as he watched transport ships ferry supplies to the orbital defense platforms that ringed the planet. The massive space stations, each one capable of housing a full fleet, had been built to project Imperial power throughout the galaxy. Never before had they been configured for defense of the homeworld itself. Behind him, the emergency session of the War Council continued in heated debate. 17 of the Empire's most senior military commanders and 3 political advisors argued over the report that Admiral Zextar had delivered upon his return from the Sol system. The recording of the encounter had been played dozens of times, analyzed by the Empire's best scientists and strategists, and the conclusion was always the same: impossible. High Chancellor, General Korthax said, his voice cutting through the arguing. With respect, we cannot make strategic decisions based on what might be elaborate human deception. No species in the galaxy possesses the technology described in Zextar's report. Mordak turned from the window to face the assembled military leaders. At over 3 meters tall, he towered above most of his subordinates, his scarred carapace bearing witness to his rise through the ranks during the Empire's expansion wars. He had commanded fleets, conquered worlds, and built the military machine that had made the Vrex the undisputed masters of known space. The idea that this dominance could be threatened by a species they had classified as primitive was almost incomprehensible. General, he said slowly, Admiral Zextar lost 46 warships in less than 15 minutes. Are you suggesting he destroyed his own fleet to perpetrate some elaborate hoax? The recording had been verified by Imperial intelligence. The sensor logs were authentic, the testimony of the surviving crew members was consistent, and the wreckage of the destroyed ships had been detected by long-range scanners. Whatever had happened in the Sol system, it had been real. Admiral Dexmara, the Empire's chief naval strategist, activated the holographic display at the center of the chamber. A three-dimensional star map appeared, showing Imperial territory in red and known alien civilizations in various other colors. A small blue dot marked its location on the edge of what they had considered empty space. Based on Captain Chen's statements during the encounter, Dexmara said, human territory extends far beyond what our surveys indicated. If their claim of colonies in 47 star systems is accurate, they control approximately 8% of this galaxy's inhabited worlds. 8% that we never detected, added Intelligence Director Quexville. Our deep space reconnaissance has been mapping this galaxy for over a millennium. How could we have missed an entire civilization with interstellar capabilities? The question hung in the air like a death sentence. The Empire's expansion had been methodical and thorough. Every star system within 500 light-years of Imperial space had been surveyed, catalogued, and either conquered or marked for future expansion. The idea that humans had been building an interstellar civilization under their noses suggested that Imperial intelligence was either completely incompetent or that human technology was far more advanced than anyone had imagined. Perhaps, suggested General Yex Thor, this Captain Chen was bluffing. Psychological warfare designed to make us overestimate their capabilities. One advanced ship does not constitute a threat to the Empire. Before anyone could respond, an aide rushed into the chamber and whispered something in Mordak's ear. The High Chancellor's expression darkened as he listened, then he nodded grimly. Gentlemen, he announced, Captain Chen has arrived. The chamber fell silent. According to the human's ultimatum, she should not have reached Vrex Prime for another 18 hours. Either human faster-than-light technology was even more advanced than they had feared, or she had been much closer to Imperial space when the Sol incident occurred. She's requesting permission to approach the planet for diplomatic discussions, Mordak continued. She also transmitted her credentials and authorization from something called the United Earth Government. One ship, General Korthax said firmly. Whatever technology they possess, one ship cannot threaten our entire homeworld. Our orbital defenses include 400 battle stations and a permanent fleet of 200 capital ships. Even if her vessel has the capabilities Admiral Zextar described, we can overwhelm it with sheer numbers. Mordak nodded slowly. The general was correct, no single ship, regardless of its technology, could threaten a planet as heavily defended as Vrex Prime. The humans had won a victory through surprise and superior technology, but here on the Empire's most protected world, they would face defenses that had been built over centuries. Grant her approach clearance, he ordered. But, maintain maximum alert status on all defensive systems. If she makes any aggressive moves, destroy her. The aide bowed and hurried away to relay the orders. Within minutes, every defensive installation in the Vrex Prime system was tracking the approaching human vessel. Gun crews rushed to their stations, shield generators powered up to full capacity, and fighter squadrons launched from their carriers to form an escort screen around the mysterious ship. Admiral Dexmara studied the incoming sensor readings with growing unease. High Chancellor, the human ship's energy signature is unusual. It's not generating the quantum wake we'd expect from any known FTL drive. It's almost as if it's not using a drive at all. Explain. Sir, it appears to be moving through spacetime itself. Not around it or through alternate dimensions, but actually manipulating the fabric of reality to achieve faster-than-light velocities. The implications were staggering. Theoretical physicists had speculated about such technology for centuries, but the energy requirements were believed to be impossible to achieve. A civilization that could manipulate spacetime directly would possess capabilities that bordered on the godlike. High Chancellor, came a voice from the communications station. The human ship is transmitting on all standard frequencies. Captain Shen is requesting permission to come aboard the command station for face-to-face negotiations. Mordak considered the request. Standard diplomatic protocol would be to meet aboard a neutral vessel or on the planet's surface under controlled conditions. But something about the human's calm confidence during her encounter with Admiral Zexstar suggested that she was not particularly concerned about her personal safety. Inform Captain Chen that she may transport aboard Orbital Defense Platform Alpha, he decided. Full ceremonial escort, but also full security protocols. I want to meet this human face to face. 2 hours later, High Chancellor Mordak stood in the main docking bay of the Empire's most heavily defended space station, surrounded by his personal guard and senior military staff. The bay had been cleared of all unnecessary personnel, and concealed weapon systems tracked every centimeter of open space. If the human captain attempted anything aggressive, she would be eliminated instantly. The transport shuttle that approached was unlike anything in Imperial databases. Sleek and organic-looking, it moved with the same impossible grace that Admiral Zexstar had described. As it settled onto the landing platform without any visible maneuvering thrusters, Mordak felt a chill of unease. Technology that advanced suggested capabilities that the Empire could not match. The shuttle's airlock opened with a soft hiss, and Captain Sarachin stepped onto Imperial soil for the first time. She was smaller than Mordak had expected. Humans were obviously a much more compact species than the Vrex, but she carried herself with the unmistakable bearing of a seasoned military officer. Her uniform was simple but elegant, dark blue with minimal ornamentation, and she wore no visible weapons. High Chancellor Mordak, she said, inclining her head slightly in what he assumed was a human gesture of respect. Thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Her voice was the same one that had spoken to Admiral Zexstar, calm and professional with an underlying strength that suggested complete confidence in her position. She spoke perfect Vrex, but Mordak suspected she was equally fluent in dozens of other galactic languages. Captain Chen, he replied formally. Welcome to Vrex Prime. I admit, your arrival has raised many questions among my people. I imagine it has. Shall we dispense with formalities and discuss the matter that brought me here? Mordak gestured toward the conference room that had been prepared for their meeting. As they walked, he studied the human more carefully. She was obviously female of her species, with dark hair pulled back in a practical style and alert brown eyes that seemed to catalog every detail of her surroundings. There was something about her presence that reminded him of predators he had encountered on his homeworld, seemingly calm and unthreatening, but radiating an aura of barely contained lethality. The conference room was a masterpiece of Imperial design, its walls displaying holographic star maps and its central table carved from a single piece of quantum crystal. Mordak took his seat at the head of the table, flanked by Admiral Dexmara and General Korthax. Captain Chen sat across from them, apparently unbothered by being outnumbered by aliens twice her size. Captain, Mordak began, your demonstration in the Sol system has caused considerable concern among my advisors. They find it difficult to believe that a species we classified as primitive could possess such advanced technology. Captain Chen leaned back in her chair slightly, and, for the first time, Mordak saw something like amusement in her expression. High Chancellor, I think there's been a fundamental misunderstanding about humanity's place in this galaxy. Your empire has been operating under the assumption that you are the dominant military force in known space. While that may have been true until recently, it is no longer accurate. Explain. Humanity achieved faster-than-light travel in 2157 of our calendar, approximately 230 years ago. We established our first interstellar colony in 2162. By 2200, we had permanent settlements in 12 star systems. Today, as I mentioned to Admiral Zexstar, we maintain colonies and research stations in 47 systems, with deep space monitoring posts in hundreds of others. Admiral Dexmara leaned forward. Our surveys detected no evidence of human activity beyond your home system. That's because you weren't looking for us specifically, and we preferred to remain unnoticed. Human philosophy regarding interstellar relations has always been cautious. We established colonies in systems that appeared uninhabited and avoided contact with other species until we were certain of their intentions. You've been spying on us, General Korthax accused. We've been observing all major galactic civilizations, Captain Chen corrected. The Vrex Empire, the Kalani Consortium, the Zephyrian Trade Federation, the Crystalline Collective, and dozens of smaller powers. It's standard procedure for any species entering the galactic community. We needed to understand the political landscape before making contact. Mordak felt another chill. The human spoke of galactic powers as if she were discussing weather patterns, casually mentioning civilizations that the Empire considered potential threats as if they were merely points of academic interest. How many ships do you have? He asked bluntly. Captain Chen smiled, and it was not a reassuring expression. High Chancellor, that's classified information. However, I can tell you that the Earth Defense Force maintains sufficient vessels to ensure the security of human space and human interests. The retribution that your admiral encountered is a patrol cruiser, designed for reconnaissance and first contact scenarios. It represents our diplomatic option. And your non-diplomatic options are considerably more direct. High Chancellor, I didn't come here to threaten your empire or to discuss military capabilities. I came here to establish new parameters for our coexistence. Your forces entered human space with hostile intent and opened fire on our vessels. This cannot be allowed to happen again. General Korthax bristled. You speak as if you're in a position to dictate terms to the Empire. We control over 3,000 worlds, Captain. Our military consists of General, Captain Chen interrupted gently, your military consists of approximately 40,000 active vessels of various classes, supported by planetary defense networks on your core worlds and garrison forces throughout your territory. Your total population is roughly 2 trillion individuals spread across those 3,000 worlds. Your industrial capacity is impressive, your military traditions are admirable, and your expansion over the past millennium has been quite remarkable. The silence that followed was deafening. The numbers Captain Chen had quoted were classified at the highest levels of imperial security. Only a handful of individuals in the entire empire had access to such detailed strategic information. How do you know that? Mordak whispered. As I said, we've been observing. High Chancellor, humanity doesn't seek conflict with the Empire. We have no territorial ambitions in your space, no desire to interfere with your internal affairs, and no interest in conquest. But we also will not tolerate aggression against human citizens or territory. You destroyed an entire fleet, Admiral Dexmara said. 46 ships, over 30,000 crew members. How is that not an act of aggression? Admiral Zexstar entered our space with a military force, ignored our warnings, and opened fire on our vessel. Under human military law, and I suspect under imperial military law as well, that constitutes an act of war. The retribution responded with appropriate force. Appropriate force? General Korthax sputtered. You obliterated an entire fleet. General, the retribution could have destroyed Admiral Zexstar's fleet in approximately 30 seconds. Instead, Captain Martinez spent 15 minutes demonstrating our capabilities while minimizing casualties. She allowed 3 ships to escape so that your leadership could receive an accurate report of the encounter. I would call that restraint, not aggression. Captain Martinez. Not Captain Chen herself. Mordak filed the detail away. It meant there were other human ship commanders, other vessels with similar capabilities. What do you want? He asked finally. 3 things, Captain Chen replied, echoing her earlier demands to Admiral Zexstar. First, formal recognition of human sovereignty over our territory. We will provide you with updated star charts showing the boundaries of human space. Imperial vessels may transit through our territory with advance notification, but military incursions will be considered acts of war. And the second? Establishment of formal diplomatic relations between our governments. We propose an exchange of ambassadors and the creation of communication protocols for resolving disputes peacefully. Humanity prefers negotiation to warfare whenever possible. The third? Captain Chen's expression grew more serious. Reparations for the attack on our vessel and compensation for the families of any human personnel who were endangered by Admiral Zextar's actions. The amount is negotiable, but the principle is not. General Korthax slammed his hand on the table. The Empire does not pay reparations to inferior species. Captain Chen turned to look at him with the same expression a teacher might give a particularly slow student. General, let me clarify something for you. Humanity is not an inferior species. We are not a primitive civilization that stumbled across advanced technology. We are not a minor power seeking to punch above our weight through bluff and deception. She stood up, and somehow her small frame seemed to fill the room with menace. We are a species that has spent 2 centuries preparing for contact with galactic civilization. We have studied your histories, your technologies, your military doctrines, and your weaknesses. We have developed countermeasures for every weapon system in your arsenal and defensive technologies that make your most advanced shields look like paper barriers. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. We have built warships that can reduce your largest dreadnoughts to their component atoms, weapons that can sterilize entire star systems, and defensive systems that make us essentially invulnerable to any attack you could mount. We have done all of this quietly, carefully, and with the express hope that it would never be necessary to demonstrate these capabilities. She sat back down, her voice returning to its previous calm tone. Your admiral made it necessary. Now you have seen what we are capable of, and you have a choice. We can coexist peacefully as equals, or we can demonstrate just how far beyond your capabilities we have actually advanced. I strongly recommend the former. Mordak stared at the human captain, trying to reconcile her small stature with the implicit threat she had just delivered. Everything about her, her posture, her voice, her casual familiarity with Imperial military secrets suggested that she was telling the truth. Humanity was not a primitive species to be conquered. They were a technological civilization that had been quietly building an empire while the Vrex had been looking the other way. Captain, he said carefully, assuming we accept your terms, what assurance do we have that humanity won't use its apparent technological advantages to expand into Imperial territory? You have my word as an officer of the Earth Defense Force, and the formal guarantee of the United Earth Government. Humanity has no territorial ambitions beyond what we currently control. We have sufficient resources within our existing territory to support our population for millennia to come. We seek trade partners, not conquests. Admiral Dexmara looked skeptical. And if other human factions disagree with this policy? What if your government changes? Admiral, human civilization is more unified than you might expect. The decision to make contact with galactic civilization was not made lightly or quickly. It represents the consensus of our species after decades of debate and preparation. That consensus is unlikely to change. But it could change, General Korthax pressed. Captain Chen nodded. It could. Just as imperial policy could change if your leadership decided that peaceful coexistence was no longer in your interests. This is why we're establishing formal diplomatic relations to ensure that both sides have mechanisms for addressing concerns before they escalate to military action. Mordak considered the proposal. The Empire had built its power on military conquest, but that strategy had always been predicated on technological superiority. If humanity truly possessed the capabilities Captain Chen claimed, then military expansion into human space would be suicidal. The destruction of Admiral Zextar's fleet proved that their weapons were beyond Imperial comprehension. But accepting these terms would be tantamount to admitting that the Empire was no longer the dominant power in the galaxy. It would mean acknowledging that humanity was an equal, possibly a superior, military force. The political ramifications alone could destabilize the entire Imperial government. Captain, he said slowly, your terms require careful consideration by the Supreme Council. I cannot make such decisions unilaterally. I understand, High Chancellor. However, I should mention that we're aware of the military buildup currently occurring throughout Imperial space. 17 additional fleets have been recalled to core systems, planetary defenses have been upgraded to maximum alert status, and your intelligence services have been tasked with gathering information about human capabilities. Once again, Captain Chen demonstrated knowledge that should have been impossible for an outsider to possess. Mordak felt a growing sense of unease. If humans could penetrate Imperial security so easily, what other secrets had they uncovered? We view these preparations as understandable precautions, she continued, but we also want to make clear that they will not be effective against human military technology. If your leadership decides to pursue military solutions to this situation, they will be disappointed with the results. Is that a threat? It's an observation based on our technical analysis of Imperial military capabilities. High Chancellor, I've been authorized to share some information that might help inform your decision. Captain Chan activated a small device she withdrew from her uniform pocket. A holographic display appeared above the table, showing what appeared to be a star system Mordak didn't recognize. This is the Zirian system, approximately 40 light-years from Imperial space. 3 days ago, it was home to a Kalani Consortium battle fleet that was conducting training exercises. 47 ships, including their newest and most advanced vessels. The hologram shifted, showing the system as it appeared now. Empty space, with only scattered debris fields where the Kalani fleet had been. The Kalani made the same mistake your admiral made, Captain Chen said quietly. They detected one of our deep space monitoring posts and decided to investigate with hostile intent. When our commander attempted to warn them off, they responded with weapons fire. Mordak stared at the image, his mind struggling to process what he was seeing. The Kalani Consortium was one of the Empire's primary rivals, a military power with technology that in some areas actually exceeded Imperial capabilities. The idea that an entire Kalani battle fleet could be destroyed by a single human ship was almost incomprehensible. How many human vessels were involved? Admiral Dex Mara asked. 1. The EDF destroyer Vengeance. The engagement lasted approximately 8 minutes. 8 minutes. An entire battle fleet, destroyed by a single ship in 8 minutes. Mordak felt his worldview crumbling around him. If humans could eliminate Kalani fleets as easily as they had destroyed Admiral Zextar's ships, then they possessed military capabilities that no other galactic civilization could match. Captain, he said quietly, what exactly are you? For the first time since the meeting had begun, Captain Chen's professional composure slipped slightly, revealing something that might have been sadness. We are what happens when a species spends 2 centuries preparing for war while hoping for peace, High Chancellor. We are the result of human paranoia, human determination, and human technological innovation focused on a single goal, ensuring that no alien species would ever be able to threaten our survival. She paused, looking out through the viewport at the orbital defense platforms that surrounded Vrex Prime. We studied your histories, all of your histories. We learned how galactic civilizations rise and fall, how technological advantages shift, how peace gives way to war. We decided that when humanity finally encountered other species, we would do so from a position of unassailable strength. And now? Now we're offering you the same thing we've offered the other galactic powers we've contacted, partnership based on mutual respect and mutual benefit. Trade, cultural exchange, scientific cooperation, peaceful coexistence. The alternative is to maintain the current status quo, where we observe you from a distance and intervene only when our interests are directly threatened. What about conquest? General Korthax asked. What if humanity decides that other species are threats that need to be eliminated? Captain Chen turned to look at him directly, and her expression was completely serious. General, if humanity had wanted to conquer the galaxy, we would have done so already. Our first contact protocol was established over a century ago, and it has always prioritized peaceful coexistence over military domination. We could have announced our presence by destroying every military fleet in known space and demanding submission. Instead, we sent a single ship to establish diplomatic contact. The room fell silent as the implications of her statement sank in. The humans weren't threatening conquest because they had already achieved the capability for conquest and chosen not to exercise it. They were offering partnership because they preferred it to the alternative, complete domination. High Chancellor, Captain Chen said, standing up, I need an answer from your government within 72 hours. We've made similar offers to the other major galactic powers, and we're hoping to establish a new framework for interspecies relations based on cooperation rather than competition. And if the Empire refuses? Then, humanity will adjust its policies accordingly. We prefer peace, but we're prepared for any eventuality. She moved toward the door, then paused. High Chancellor, I hope your leadership will consider carefully what I've told you today. Humanity represents an opportunity for the galaxy to move beyond the cycle of conquest and warfare that has dominated interspecies relations for millennia. But that opportunity will not remain open indefinitely. As Captain Chen left the conference room, escorted by Imperial guards back to her shuttle, Mordak remained seated at the table, staring at the holographic display that still showed the empty space where a Kalani battle fleet had once existed. Sir? Admiral Dexmara asked quietly. What are your orders? Mordak closed his eyes, feeling the weight of a decision that would determine the fate of the Empire and, possibly the entire galaxy. For 3,000 years, the Vrex had expanded through military conquest, building an empire on the principle that might made right. Now they faced a species that had taken that principle to its logical conclusion and offered them a choice between partnership and irrelevance. Contact the Supreme Council, he said finally. Emergency session. Full classification protocols. And, Admiral? Yes, sir? Prepare detailed reports on everything Captain Chen told us. Every word, every implication, every threat. The Council needs to understand exactly what we're dealing with. As the human shuttle departed Orbital Defense Platform Alpha, disappearing into space with the same impossible grace it had displayed upon arrival, Mordak wondered if he had just witnessed the dawn of a new age in galactic history or the beginning of the end of the Vrex Empire. The Supreme Council chamber of the Vrex Empire was a monument to 3 millennia of conquest and expansion. Its circular walls were lined with trophies taken from defeated civilizations, weapons that had failed to protect their creators, artwork from species that no longer existed, and star charts marking the inexorable spread of imperial power. At the center of the vast room stood the council table, carved from a single piece of neutronium and polished to mirror brightness. Around it sat the 13 most powerful individuals in known space, their combined authority extending over 3,000 worlds and 2 trillion subjects. High Chancellor Mordak activated the chamber's security protocols with a gesture, sealing the room against all forms of surveillance or communication. The discussion that was about to take place would determine the future of the Empire, and possibly the fate of every species in the galaxy. Counselors, he began, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustic design, you have all reviewed the reports from Admiral Zexstar and the recordings of my meeting with Captain Chen. We face a situation unprecedented in Imperial history. Counselor Vexthak, the Empire's chief military strategist, leaned forward in his seat. At nearly 4 meters tall, he was one of the largest Vrex alive, his carapace bearing the scars of 100 battles during the Empire's expansion wars. High Chancellor, with all due respect, we are allowing ourselves to be intimidated by parlor tricks and sophisticated deception. No species could have developed technology that far beyond our own without our knowledge. Explain the destruction of Admiral Zexstar's fleet, challenged Counselor Quindar, the Empire's chief scientist. Her forearms gestured at the holographic display showing the aftermath of the Sol incident. 46 ships reduced to component atoms in 15 minutes. Our best weapons could not achieve such results against unshielded targets, let alone vessels with military-grade armor. Staged destruction using hidden explosive devices, Vexthak replied dismissively. The humans somehow managed to plant charges aboard our ships before the encounter. It's the only logical explanation. Counselor Zoreke, the eldest member of the council and veteran of the Empire's earliest expansion campaigns, clicked his mandibles in amusement. And how, pray tell, did these primitive humans manage to infiltrate 46 separate Imperial warships, plant undetectable explosives throughout their hulls, and coordinate their simultaneous detonation across multiple light minutes of space? Vexthak's silence spoke volumes. Even if humans possessed such infiltration capabilities, the logistics of such an operation would require technology and resources far beyond what any primitive species should possess. There is another explanation, said Counselor Nexvara, the Empire's intelligence director. Her voice carried the weight of someone who had spent decades gathering secrets from across the galaxy. Captain Chen was telling the truth. Humanity has spent 2 centuries developing military technology specifically designed to counter galactic civilizations. They have achieved capabilities that exceed our own. Impossible, Vexthak insisted. The Empire has the most advanced military in the galaxy. Our science has been developed over 3,000 years of conquest and expansion. No single species could surpass us in such a short time.
Unless, Quindar said quietly, they had access to information we lacked. The chamber fell silent as the implications of her statement sank in.
If humans had been observing galactic civilizations for 2 centuries, they would have access to technological data from dozens of different species. They could study the strengths and weaknesses of every major military force in known space, analyze their tactics, and develop countermeasures without those civilizations ever knowing they were being watched. The question, Mordak said, is not whether humanity possesses advanced technology.
Admiral Zextar's sensor logs prove that their capabilities are real. The question is how we respond to this new reality. Counselor Hexmore, the Empire's chief economist, activated his own holographic display. High Chancellor, I've been analyzing the economic implications of Captain Chen's proposals.
If we accept her terms, formal recognition of human sovereignty, diplomatic relations, and reparations, we essentially acknowledge that humanity is our equal in galactic affairs.
And the problem with that acknowledgement is?
Political stability, sir. The Empire's authority is built on the premise that we are the dominant military force in the galaxy. Our subject species accept imperial rule because they believe resistance is futile. If word spreads that humanity can challenge imperial fleets and win, it could trigger rebellions throughout our territory. The concern was valid. The Empire ruled through strength, and any perceived weakness could destabilize their control over thousands of worlds. Species that had submitted to imperial authority only because they lacked alternatives might reconsider their loyalty if they believed the Empire could be successfully opposed.
On the other hand, Hexmore continued, the economic benefits of trade with an advanced technological civilization could be substantial.
If humans possess the capabilities Captain Chen described, access to their technology could revolutionize imperial industry and military capabilities. Counselor Yexlis, the Empire's chief diplomat, had been studying the recordings of the encounter with Captain Chen.
There's another consideration, she said.
Captain Chen mentioned that humanity has made similar offers to other galactic powers. If the Kalani Consortium or the Zephyrian Federation accepts human partnership while we refuse, we could find ourselves at a severe disadvantage. The thought of their rivals gaining access to superior technology while the Empire remained isolated was deeply troubling. The delicate balance of power that had maintained relative peace between the major galactic civilizations could shift dramatically if one side gained access to weapons that could obliterate entire fleets.
What intelligence do we have on human contact with other civilizations? Mordak asked. Nexvara consulted her datapad. Limited, sir.
Our agents within Kalani Space report unusual ship movements near their core systems, but we've been unable to confirm direct contact with human forces.
Similarly, Zephyrian intelligence has gone dark in several sectors, which could indicate either human activity or enhanced security measures. In other words, we're operating blind while our rivals may already be negotiating with humanity, Mordak summarized grimly. The strategic implications were staggering.
If the Empire delayed its decision while other civilizations moved quickly to establish relations with humanity, they could find themselves surrounded by allies equipped with superior technology.
The Empire that had dominated the galaxy for 3 millennia could become a minor regional power overnight. I recommend immediate acceptance of human terms, Yexley said firmly. We can negotiate the details of reparations and territorial boundaries, but we need to establish diplomatic contact before our competitors gain an insurmountable advantage.
I disagree, Vexthak countered.
Accepting their demands shows weakness and sets a dangerous precedent.
Every minor civilization will think they can threaten the Empire and demand concessions. General, Quindar said acidly, humanity is not a minor civilization threatening the Empire.
They are a technological power that has already demonstrated the ability to destroy our fleets. This is not about showing weakness, it's about recognizing reality.
Mordak listened to the debate with growing unease. The Empire's leadership was divided at a time when unity was essential. If they could not reach consensus quickly, the opportunity to establish favorable relations with humanity might pass to their rivals.
Counselor Nexvara, he said, what additional intelligence do we have on human military capabilities? The intelligence director activated a new holographic display showing deep space sensor readings.
Sir, we've detected unusual energy signatures in 17 star systems previously thought to be uninhabited.
The signatures are consistent with advanced fusion reactors and antimatter containment systems. If these are human installations, they suggest a much larger industrial base than Captain Chun indicated.
How much larger? potentially hundreds of colonies and industrial facilities spread across thousands of light-years. The energy output we're detecting would support a population in the hundreds of billions, possibly trillions. The numbers were staggering. If humanity possessed industrial capacity on that scale, they could potentially outproduce the entire Vrex Empire. Combined with superior technology, such production capabilities would make them virtually unstoppable in a prolonged conflict. There's more, Nexvara continued. Long-range astronomical observations have detected artificial structures around several distant stars. Massive constructs that appear to be harvesting stellar energy directly. If humans have developed the technology to build such installations, their power generation capabilities exceed our own by several orders of magnitude. The chamber fell silent as the full scope of humanity's apparent capabilities became clear. The empire that had considered itself the pinnacle of galactic civilization was suddenly revealed to be a minor player compared to a species that had been hiding in plain sight for 2 centuries. "Sir," came a voice from the chamber's communication system. An aide's urgent tone cut through the heavy silence. "High Chancellor, we're receiving priority communications from Kalani and Zephyri in space. Both governments are requesting immediate diplomatic conferences with the Empire." Mordak felt his blood chill. If their rivals were calling for emergency meetings, it likely meant they had already made contact with humanity and were now trying to coordinate a response to this new galactic situation. "Put me through to both governments simultaneously," he ordered. The holographic display shifted to show 2 alien figures. Premier Calvex of the Kalani Consortium appeared as a tall, ethereal being of shifting crystalline features, while Trademaster Zephlon of the Zephyrian Federation displayed the characteristic multiple arms and bioluminescent patterns of his species. "High Chancellor," Premier Calvex said without preamble, "we need to discuss the situation developing with the human species." "You've made contact with them?" Mordak asked. 12 hours ago, Trademaster Zephlon confirmed. "A human diplomat arrived at our capital unannounced and presented terms for diplomatic recognition and trade agreements. The technological capabilities they demonstrated were unsettling. They destroyed one of our battle fleets," Premier Calvex added bluntly. 47 ships eliminated in minutes by a single human vessel. The demonstration was clearly intended to prevent any thoughts of military resistance. Mordak exchanged glances with his counselors. The pattern was becoming clear: humanity was making contact with all major galactic powers simultaneously, demonstrating overwhelming military superiority to discourage resistance while offering partnership to encourage cooperation. "What were their demands?" he asked. "Similar to what they probably offered you," Zephlon replied. "Recognition of sovereignty, formal diplomatic relations, and cessation of any military activities in their territory. They also proposed establishment of a new galactic council to coordinate relations between all spacefaring civilizations." A galactic council. The implications were staggering. Humanity was not just seeking to establish relations with existing powers, they were proposing to restructure galactic politics entirely. "And your responses?" Mordak inquired. "We're inclined to accept," Premier Calvex said. "The alternative appears to be annihilation. Our military analysts confirm that human technology is centuries ahead of our own. Resistance would be suicide." "Agreed," Zephlon added. "We're calling for a joint meeting of all galactic powers to coordinate our response. Humanity has given us 72 hours to provide our answers. We need to ensure we're not negotiating against each other for human favor." The suggestion made strategic sense. If the 3 major galactic civilizations presented a united front, they would be in a stronger negotiating position than if they competed for human attention individually. But it also meant accepting that humanity was now the dominant power that would dictate terms to the rest of the galaxy. "Where would you propose this meeting take place?" Mordak asked. "Neutral space," Premier Calvex suggested. "The Nexus station at the intersection of our 3 territories. Maximum security, equal representation, and far enough from human space to conduct private discussions." Mordak considered the proposal. The Nexus station was a joint facility that had been established centuries earlier to facilitate trade and diplomacy between the 3 civilizations. It would be an appropriate venue for discussions of such magnitude. "I agree," he said finally. "When?" 6 hours, Zephlon replied. "We need to move quickly if we're going to present a coordinated response to humanity's ultimatum."
As the communication ended, Mordak turned to face his counselors. The debate that had consumed the chamber for hours suddenly seemed irrelevant. Humanity was forcing the hand of every galactic civilization simultaneously, giving them no choice but to respond quickly or risk being left out of whatever new order was emerging. Counselors, he announced, prepare for departure to Nexus Station. We're going to coordinate our response with the Kalani and Zephyrian governments.
Sir, Vexthak protested, meeting with our rivals shows weakness.
We should negotiate with humanity independently.
General, Mordak replied tiredly, we are no longer in a position to project strength through isolation. If humanity has the capabilities they've demonstrated, then, the old paradigm of competing galactic powers is finished. We're all facing the same situation, adapt to this new reality or become irrelevant. As the counselors began preparations for the emergency summit, Mordak remained in the chamber, staring up at the star charts that showed the extent of Imperial territory.
For 3,000 years, those maps had represented the growing power of the Vrex Empire, the steady expansion of their influence across the galaxy.
Now they seem like quaint historical artifacts, reminders of an age when species like the Vrex had thought themselves masters of space. An aide approached with a datapad containing preliminary reports from Imperial intelligence. Sir, our deep space sensors have detected massive ship movements throughout human space. Hundreds of vessels, some of them larger than our biggest dreadnoughts, converging on various strategic positions.
Military preparations? Unknown, sir.
The ships don't match any known military configuration. They appear to be a mix of industrial vessels, transport ships, and what might be mobile construction platforms.
It's as if they're preparing for a major infrastructure project rather than warfare. Infrastructure projects.
While the galactic powers debated how to respond to humanity's ultimatum, the humans themselves were apparently preparing for something entirely different. The implications were both reassuring and terrifying. Reassuring because it suggested they weren't planning military conquest, terrifying because it implied they were so confident in their position that they could ignore potential threats while pursuing their own agenda.
Sir, the aide continued, there's something else. We've received a message from the human diplomatic mission. Captain Chan requests permission to address the joint meeting at Nexus Station.
Mordak closed his eyes, feeling the weight of history pressing down upon him. In a matter of days, the galaxy had been transformed from a collection of competing civilizations into something entirely new. And, at the center of that transformation was humanity, a species that had spent 2 centuries preparing for this moment while the rest of the galaxy remained oblivious to their existence. Inform Captain Chen that her request is approved, he said quietly. And, notify the other governments that humanity will be represented at the summit. As he left the chamber to prepare for the most important diplomatic meeting in galactic history, Mordak wondered if they were about to witness the birth of a new age of cooperation and prosperity, or if they were simply negotiating the terms of their own subjugation to a species that had already decided the fate of the galaxy. Either way, the age of imperial dominance was over. The only question now was what would replace it. The Nexus station hung in space like a jewel suspended between 3 dying stars, its crystalline structure reflecting the pale light from the ancient stellar remnants. Built at the precise gravitational balance point between Vrex, Kalani, and Zephyrian territories, the station had served as neutral ground for 3 centuries of diplomatic negotiations, trade agreements, and occasional peace talks. Never before had it hosted a meeting that would determine the fate of galactic civilization itself. Captain Sarah Chan stood before the viewport in her assigned quarters, watching the steady stream of ships arriving from across known space. The massive Rex Dreadnought Imperial might had taken position 3,000 kilometers from the station, its escorts forming a protective screen around the diplomatic vessel. The Kalani delegation had arrived in their characteristic bioships, living vessels grown rather than built, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The Zephyrian contingent traveled in their trademark geometric craft, perfect polyhedrons that seemed to defy conventional understanding of aerodynamics. And, scattered throughout the system, almost invisible against the cosmic background, were the ships of humanity's Earth Defense Force. To most observers, they would appear to be minor escort vessels or perhaps advanced civilian transports. Only someone familiar with human technology would recognize them as some of the most deadly weapons ever created. Captain, came a voice from the communication panel. Admiral Harrison is requesting a final briefing before the negotiations begin. Chen turned from the viewport and activated the secure channel. Admiral Harrison's weathered face appeared on the screen, his expression carrying the weight of 40 years of military service and the knowledge that the next few hours would reshape the galaxy forever.
Sarah, he said without preamble, how are our hosts responding to the situation? Exactly as predicted, Admiral. All three governments are more concerned about being excluded from negotiations than they are about the terms we're offering. The Kalani have already transmitted preliminary acceptance of our territorial claims.
The Zephyrians are pushing for expanded trade agreements. The Vreks are still trying to determine if there's a way to maintain their military dominance.
And your assessment of their military intentions?
Chen consulted her datapad, reviewing the intelligence reports that had been flooding in for the past 72 hours.
Minimal immediate threat.
All three civilizations have recalled their fleets to defensive positions around their core systems. They're clearly preparing for the possibility of conflict, but none of them appear willing to initiate hostilities. Smart of them, Harrison replied grimly. The demonstration your counterpart provided to the Kalani fleet has apparently convinced everyone that military resistance would be futile. The destruction of the Kalani battle fleet had been a calculated move, designed to establish human military capabilities without requiring repeated demonstrations. Captain Martinez of the Vengeance had eliminated 47 ships in 8 minutes, leaving only debris and sensor recordings to tell the tale.
Within hours, intelligence networks throughout the galaxy were buzzing with reports of human technological superiority. Admiral, Chen said, I've been reviewing the cultural profiles of the species we'll be dealing with today.
There's something troubling in the psychological analyses.
Elaborate.
All three civilizations are built around hierarchical power structures that depend on perceived strength.
The Vrex Empire maintains control through military dominance.
The Kalani Consortium operates on the assumption that they possess the most advanced technology in known space.
The Zephyrians built their trade federation by convincing others that they were economically indispensable.
Chen paused, organizing her thoughts. Sir, we're not just offering them partnership, we're destroying the fundamental assumptions that their entire civilizations are built upon.
That kind of paradigm shift can lead to political collapse, social upheaval, even species-wide psychological trauma. Admiral Harrison nodded slowly.
The possibility had been discussed extensively during the planning stages of Operation First Contact. Humanity had spent 2 centuries studying galactic civilizations, and they understood the potential consequences of their revelation better than anyone.
Your recommendations? Gradual integration rather than immediate transformation. We give them time to adapt to the new reality while providing enough support to prevent societal collapse. It's going to take decades for these civilizations to adjust to their new position in the galactic hierarchy. And if they decide they prefer the old hierarchy? Chen's expression hardened. Then, we remind them that the old hierarchy no longer exists, Admiral. Humanity didn't ask to become the dominant galactic power, but we're not going to pretend we're not. Too many human lives depend on maintaining our security.
The conversation was interrupted by an announcement from the station's central communications system.
All delegations, please report to Conference Chamber Alpha.